Close your eyes and imagine you are floating between the stars, far from any sun, far from any world. You open them again, and there is nothing. Not darkness the way a bedroom is dark when the lights go out, not the soft gray of a cloudy night. Something deeper, a blackness so complete that your eyes strain to find a single point of reference and fail. This is why the true nature of space is one of the most unsettling discoveries in all of science, because the emptiness out there is not simply the absence of light. It is an absence so vast, so pure, and so absolute that our minds were never built to hold it. Before we begin, be sure to like the video and subscribe for more journeys into the cosmos. Now, take a deep breath and let's begin. We tend to think we understand darkness. We have all been in a room with the curtains drawn, in a basement with the power off, in a forest at night with no moon overhead. We call that darkness, and in a human sense, it is. But even in the blackest room you have ever stood in, light is still there. It leaks under the door. It glows faintly from a clock, from a phone, from the sky beyond the window. Photons, the tiny particles that carry light, are bouncing off every surface around you, sliding into your eyes in numbers too large to count. Your version of darkness is soaked in light compared to what waits beyond our planet. To truly understand how dark space is, we have to leave all of that behind. We have to travel to places where light is not dimmed, but nearly erased. And once we arrive, we discover something that no horror story ever prepared us for. The universe, for the most part, is empty, cold, and profoundly, overwhelmingly dark. Let us start close to home, because even here, the darkness is hiding in plain sight. Right above you, beyond the blue of the daytime sky, space is already black. The blue you see during the day is a trick of our atmosphere. Sunlight enters the thin shell of air around Earth and scatters, painting the sky in that familiar color. But that blue is a curtain, and behind it, the true stage is jet black at every hour of the day. Astronauts who have flown above the atmosphere describe it again and again. The moment they rise past the last wisps of air, the sky does not fade to a darker blue. It snaps to black, a black so hard and so total that the stars do not twinkle. They simply hang there, sharp and silent, against a background of pure nothing. And here is the first strange truth. Even in the brightness of full sunlight, space around you is black. On the moon, where there is no atmosphere at all, astronauts stood in blazing daylight, their suits lit up like beacons, and above them the sky remained utterly dark. You could look up during the lunar day and see nothing but blackness, the sun burning fiercely on one side, and the deepest night you can imagine directly overhead. That contrast alone tells you something important. Darkness in space is not caused by the lack of a nearby star. It is caused by the simple fact that there is almost nothing out there for light to touch. Think about why you can see anything at all. You see this world because light bounces. A lamp sends out photons. They strike a wall, a face, a page, and scatter back into your eyes. Every object you have ever seen, you saw because light reflected off it and reached you. Now, remove the objects. Remove the walls, the dust, the air, the surfaces. Send a beam of light into a region where there is nothing to bounce off of, and that light will simply keep going, on and on, never scattering, never returning. To an observer floating in that space, the beam is invisible. The light is there, racing past at 300,000 kilometers per second, but with nothing to strike, it delivers no image to the eye. This is the heart of why space is so dark. It is not that the universe lacks light. It is that the universe is so empty that light has almost nothing to illuminate. Between the stars, across distances that stagger the imagination, there is mostly void. Consider what fills the space between the planets in our own solar system. We call it a vacuum, and for good reason. If you took a single cubic centimeter of the space between Earth and Mars, a volume roughly the size of a sugar cube, you would find only a handful of atoms drifting inside it. Compare that to the same sugar cube of air here at sea level, which holds tens of billions of molecules crashing into one another countless times each second. The gap between those two numbers is almost impossible to feel in your bones. Air is a churning crowd. The space between planets is a near-perfect emptiness. And yet, the solar system is one of the more crowded neighborhoods in the cosmos. We have a sun pouring out light, planets catching that light, dust drifting between the worlds, comets and asteroids tumbling through the dark. There is enough material here that sunlight has surfaces to strike, which is why we can see the planets, the moons, the faint glow of dust after sunset. But leave the solar system behind, and the emptiness deepens beyond anything we experience near home. The space between the stars is called the interstellar medium, and it is thinner than the finest laboratory vacuum humans have ever built. In the average patch of our galaxy, a single cubic centimeter of interstellar space contains about one atom, one, where the air you are breathing packs in numbers with more than 19 zeros after them. The space between stars offers a lone atom, drifting alone, often with no neighbor for a great distance in any direction. This is a level of emptiness that language struggles to carry. If you could shrink yourself down and stand inside a cubic centimeter of that interstellar gas, you might wait a very long time before a second atom wandered close enough to notice. And this is not some rare, unusual pocket of the galaxy. This is the normal condition of the space between stars. It is the rule, not the exception. Now stretch your imagination further, out beyond the edge of our galaxy, into the gulfs that separate one galaxy from the next. Here, the emptiness reaches a level that borders on the sacred and the terrifying at once. In the vast spaces between galaxies, the density of matter drops to something like one atom for every several cubic meters. Read that again slowly. Not one atom per cubic centimeter, but one atom scattered across a volume large enough to swallow a small room. If you stood in the middle of intergalactic space and swept your hand through the dark, you could pass it through a region larger than a house, and never once brush against a single particle of ordinary matter. This is the emptiest environment that exists on a large scale anywhere in the known universe. And it is not a tiny sliver of the cosmos. It is most of it. When astronomers add up all the space in the observable universe and ask how much of it is filled with the churning insides of stars, or the surfaces of planets, or the glowing clouds where new suns are born, the answer is a vanishingly small fraction. The overwhelming majority of the universe is this deep intergalactic emptiness, colder and darker and more silent than anything a human being has ever directly experienced. We live on a warm, bright, crowded speck, and we mistake it for normal. But our speck is the exception. The rule is the void. There is a question that seems almost childish at first, and yet it kept some of the greatest minds in history awake at night. Why is the sky dark? It sounds obvious. The sun goes down, and night falls. But think a little harder, and the puzzle sharpens into something profound. The universe contains an almost unimaginable number of stars. Hundreds of billions of stars in our galaxy alone, and hundreds of billions of galaxies beyond it. If the universe were infinite and unchanging, filled evenly with stars in every direction, then no matter where you looked, your line of sight should eventually land on the surface of a star. Every single point in the night sky should blaze with light. The whole sky should glow as brightly as the surface of the sun, in every direction, at every hour. And yet, when you step outside on a clear night, you see mostly black, with scattered points of light hanging in a great darkness. This contradiction became known as a paradox, named after the astronomer who described it clearly in the early 19th century. Why, in a universe seemingly full of stars, is the night sky dark instead of ablaze? The answer, when it finally came, reshaped our understanding of everything. The night sky is dark because the universe is not infinite in the way people once imagined. It has an age. It began, as far as we can tell, roughly 14 billion years ago, in the event we call the Big Bang. And because light travels at a fixed speed, there is a limit to how far we can see. Light from the most distant regions has simply not had enough time to reach us yet. We are surrounded by a horizon, a boundary beyond which the light has not arrived and may never arrive. This means the number of stars whose light can actually reach your eyes is finite, not infinite. There are enormous, truly vast stretches of the sky where, between the scattered stars and galaxies, there is simply nothing sending light in your direction at all. Those gaps are the darkness. But there is a second reason, and it is even stranger. The universe is expanding. Space itself is stretching, carrying the distant galaxies away from us and away from each other. As that light travels across billions of years and billions of light years, the expansion of space stretches the light itself, dragging it toward longer and longer wavelengths, sliding it out of the visible range and into forms of light our eyes cannot detect at all. Some of the most distant glow in the universe, light that once shone brightly, has been stretched so far by the expansion of space that it now reaches us not as visible light, but as faint radio whispers and cold microwaves, invisible to the human eye. So the darkness of the night sky is not empty of meaning. It is a message. It is telling you that the universe had a beginning, that it is expanding, and that it is mostly, staggeringly empty. The blackness between the stars is not a background. It is the main event. To feel just how dark the deep universe is, it helps to understand how cold it is, because in space, darkness and cold are two faces of the same emptiness. Heat, in the end, is a form of light and motion. A warm object glows, even if we cannot see the glow with our eyes, radiating energy out into its surroundings. When you stand near a fire, you feel its warmth because photons are streaming off the flames and striking your skin. Take away every nearby source of heat, and an object will keep radiating its own warmth into the surrounding space, cooling down, growing dimmer, until it approaches the temperature of the emptiness around it. So what is the temperature of empty space itself, far from any star? Across the vast reaches between the galaxies, the temperature hovers just a few degrees above the coldest possible temperature that can exist, a limit scientists call absolute zero. In the units astronomers use, the deep background of the universe sits at only about 2.7 degrees above that absolute floor. That is colder than anything found naturally anywhere on Earth, colder than the deepest Antarctic winter, colder than the far side of any frozen moon touched by sunlight. This faint whisper of warmth, this 2.7 degrees, is not the heat of nearby stars. It is the fading afterglow of the Big Bang itself, the ancient light of the newborn universe, stretched and cooled over nearly 14 billion years until it became the coldest, faintest glow imaginable. Everywhere you point a sensitive enough instrument, in every direction, that ancient chill is there, filling the entire sky with a light so cold and so dim that no eye could ever see it. That is the true baseline of the cosmos, not warmth, not brightness, but a near-perfect cold and a near-perfect dark, interrupted only here and there by the rare fires of the stars. And the stars, for all their power, are pinpricks against that immensity. Imagine you could travel to the space between two galaxies and simply float there, in a suit that kept you alive, with a window to look out of. There would be no sun to warm your face. The nearest galaxies would appear as faint smudges, so distant that their combined light could not push back the black. You would not see a single star as a bright, close companion. You would see scattered, faint points, unimaginably far away, and between them, a darkness so complete that it would feel less like a place and more like a condition, a permanent state of the universe that has nothing to do with you and never will. There would be no wind, no sound, no sense of up or down, only the cold and the black, stretching in every direction without end. This is not the exception. Remember, this is most of the universe. The warm, lit rooms of the cosmos, the places near stars where light and heat pool together, are tiny islands. The ocean they float in is this. To understand why the darkness is so complete, you have to grasp the distances involved, and this is where the human mind begins to fail in the most instructive way. We are simply not built to feel these gaps. Our brains evolved to judge the distance to a river, a mountain, a running animal. They collapse under the weight of what space actually contains. Let us try anyway, carefully, without drowning you in numbers. Light is the fastest thing in the universe. Nothing that carries information or energy can move faster. In a single second, a beam of light travels about 300,000 kilometers, enough to circle the entire Earth more than 7 times in the time it takes you to say the word. That is a speed so great that, for anything on Earth, it feels instant. Flip a switch, and the light fills the room before you can register the motion of your hand. Now, take that unimaginable speed and point it at the rest of the universe. Sunlight, leaving the surface of our sun, takes about 8 minutes to cross the gap and reach your skin. So when you feel the warmth of the sun, you are feeling light that left it 8 minutes ago. Push out to the edge of our solar system, to the cold and distant worlds beyond the outer planets, and that same light now takes hours to arrive. Already, at the scale of a single star system, light is no longer instant. It has become slow. Now, leave the solar system entirely, and the distances explode. The nearest star to our sun, a small red neighbor, lies so far away that its light, moving at that incredible speed, takes more than 4 years to reach us. More than 4 years, at the fastest speed that exists in nature, just to cross the gap to the single closest star. And between our sun and that neighbor, across all those years of travel at the speed of light, there is essentially nothing. No warmth, no light except the 2 distant fires at either end. Only the thin, cold interstellar medium, 1 lonely atom per cubic centimeter, and a darkness that goes on and on. That is the gap to the closest star. Our galaxy contains hundreds of billions of stars, and the typical distance between them, out in the quieter regions like our own, is measured in those same enormous, light-year-spanning gulfs. Picture the stars of the galaxy as scattered grains of sand. If each grain of sand were a star, and you place them at the true scale of the galaxy, those grains would sit many kilometers apart from one another, with nothing but empty air between them for the entire distance. That is how sparse the stars really are. We look up at a night sky that seems crowded with them, packed together into a glittering dome, but that crowding is an illusion of perspective, the same way distant streetlights seem to bunch together as they recede toward the horizon. In truth, each of those stars is separated from its neighbors by an ocean of darkness so wide that even light, the fastest messenger in existence, needs years to cross it. Now zoom out again. past the entire galaxy, to the scale of galaxies themselves. Our galaxy is one of hundreds of billions, and the gaps between galaxies dwarf even the gaps between stars. The light reaching us from our nearest large galactic neighbor left it more than 2 million years ago, before our own species existed in anything like its current form. When you look at that faint smudge in the night sky, you are not seeing it as it is now. You are seeing light that has been crossing the emptiness for millions of years, sliding across a gulf so wide and so dark that the numbers stop meaning anything at all. And between galaxies, remember, the emptiness is at its most extreme. One atom scattered across cubic meters of space, and a darkness that has been essentially unbroken since the universe began. This is the architecture of the cosmos. Tiny, bright, warm islands, unimaginably far apart, separated by oceans of freezing black. Let us make this personal, because numbers alone will never carry the true weight of it. Imagine that, somehow, you were placed in the deepest dark of intergalactic space, in a suit that kept you breathing and warm, with no ship, no light, no companion. What would you actually experience? The first thing you would notice is that your eyes stop working the way they always have. On Earth, even on the darkest night, your eyes slowly adjust, and shapes emerge from the gloom. Given a few minutes, you can make out the outline of a room, the edge of a tree, the faint gray of the ground. That works because there is always a little light, scattering off surfaces, feeding your eyes something to build an image from. In the deep dark of intergalactic space, that process would begin and then simply stop. Your pupils would open as wide as they can, hungry for light, and find almost none. The nearest galaxies would appear as dim, distant smears, too faint and too far to illuminate anything. You would hold your hand in front of your face, and you would not see it. Not a shadow, not an outline, nothing. The darkness would be so complete that your brain, starved of visual information, might begin to invent light of its own, faint sparks and drifting shapes that are not really there, the mind refusing to accept the total absence. There would be no direction. On Earth, there is always up and down, always the pull of gravity to tell your body which way is which. Floating in the deep void, far from any large mass, you would have no sense of orientation at all. You could not tell if you were falling, rising, spinning, or perfectly still. The universe would offer no clue. There would be no sound. Space is a near-perfect vacuum, and sound needs a medium to travel through: air, water, something. In the emptiness, sound simply cannot exist. The silence would be more total than any silence you have ever known, not the quiet of a still room, but the absence of the very possibility of sound. You would hear only your own heartbeat, your own breath, the small internal noises of a body that suddenly feels very fragile and very alone, and the cold. Even in your suit, you would understand, in some deep animal way, that just beyond the thin layer protecting you lies a cold so profound that it approaches the absolute limit of what cold can be, a temperature at which the very motion of atoms nearly ceases. There would be no sun to rise. No dawn would ever come. If you waited a year, 1,000 years, 1,000,000 years, the scene would not change. The same faint smudges of distant galaxies, the same overwhelming black, the same silence. This is the environment that fills most of the universe, not as a rare nightmare, but as the ordinary, everyday condition of nearly all the space that exists. We are so used to our warm, bright, noisy little world that we cannot easily accept it. But the truth is that Earth, with its blue sky and its golden light and its endless sounds, is a tiny, improbable exception, a fragile bubble of warmth and brightness suspended in an ocean of cold and dark that stretches beyond all comprehension. And here is perhaps the most sobering thought of all. That deep dark is not far away. It is not a distant land you would have to journey to for a lifetime to find. It begins just 100 kilometers or so above your head, where the atmosphere thins away to nothing. Right now, as you sit reading or listening, that darkness is directly overhead, held back only by the thin shell of air that wraps our world. We live our entire lives at the very edge of it, protected by a layer of atmosphere so thin that, if the Earth were the size of an apple, that protective layer would be thinner than the apple's skin. If the space between galaxies seems empty beyond reason, there are places in the universe that take emptiness to an even more extreme level. When astronomers first began to map the large-scale structure of the cosmos, charting where the galaxies lie across enormous distances, they expected to find them scattered more or less evenly, sprinkled through space like stars across the sky. What they found instead astonished them. The galaxies are not spread out smoothly at all. They are gathered into vast, delicate structures, long threads and sheets and knots of galaxies, woven together into a pattern that resembles a cosmic web or the foam of countless bubbles pressed against one another. And between these threads and sheets lie the voids. Cosmic voids are the largest empty regions in all of existence. They are roughly spherical bubbles of near total emptiness, and they are staggeringly large. A single one of these voids can stretch across hundreds of millions of light years, a gulf so wide that light itself needs hundreds of millions of years just to cross from one side to the other. Inside them, there are almost no galaxies at all. Where a normal region of the universe might hold many galaxies, a cosmic void of the same size might hold only a handful, sometimes fewer, drifting alone in an emptiness that dwarfs anything we have described so far. These voids make up a large fraction of the volume of the universe. Much of space, when you zoom out far enough, is not the glittering web of galaxies at all, but these enormous, dark, empty bubbles between the threads. Imagine being a lone galaxy inside one of these voids. You would look out in every direction and see almost nothing nearby. The other galaxies, part of the Great Web, would be so distant that they would appear as the faintest possible smudges if they could be seen at all. A civilization living inside such a void, gazing up at their night sky, might come to believe that their galaxy was alone in the cosmos, an island floating in an endless, featureless dark, with no sign that the rich structure of the universe existed at all beyond their horizon. Their darkness would be even deeper than ours. Their loneliness even more profound. And here is the humbling part. Our own galaxy sits in a region that is emptier than average, a stretch of the cosmos where galaxies are more thinly spread than in the denser parts of the web. We are not in the deepest void, but we are in a quieter, emptier corner than most. Even our night sky, crowded as it seems, is a relatively sparse and lonely one by cosmic standards. The universe, at the largest scale we can measure, is mostly these dark, empty bubbles, bounded by thin walls of galaxies. And the emptiness inside them is the emptiest and darkest environment that exists on the grandest scale of all. When we say space is dark, this is what we are truly pointing to. Not merely the black between the planets or the black between the stars, but these titanic voids, these regions so vast and so empty that the entire history of our species, all our wars and songs and civilizations, would be nothing more than a single, silent instant against the eons it takes light to cross them. There is one more kind of darkness in the universe, and it is a darkness of a completely different character. Not the darkness of empty space, where light simply has nothing to touch, but a darkness that actively swallows light, that takes it in and never lets it out again. These are the black holes. A black hole is what remains when an enormous star reaches the end of its life and collapses under its own weight. The core caves inward with such force that matter is crushed into a region of almost unimaginable density, warping the space around it into a pit so steep that nothing, not even light, can climb back out. Around every black hole is a boundary called the event horizon. Cross it, and there is no return. Light that falls past that edge does not slow down, does not bounce back, does not scatter into the sky. It is simply gone, pulled into a place from which no signal can ever emerge. This is why we call them black. They emit no light of their own, and they allow no light to escape from within. If you were to float near one, out in the dark of space, you might not see it at all as an object. You would see, instead, a region where the stars behind it vanish, a circle of absolute nothing, a hole cut out of the fabric of the sky. The stars near its edge would appear smeared and bent, their light dragged around the rim by the terrible curving of space, forming a warped halo around a core of perfect black. And that core is the darkest thing in the universe. Not dark because it is empty, but dark because it consumes. At the center of nearly every large galaxy, including our own, there lurks a truly monstrous black hole, one with a mass millions or even billions of times that of our Sun. At the heart of our own galaxy sits such a giant, a black hole named Sagittarius A, quietly anchoring the whole vast wheel of stars around it. For a long time, we could only infer its presence by watching the stars near the galactic center whip around something invisible at tremendous speed, dragged by the gravity of an object we could not see. Then, in a triumph of human ingenuity, astronomers managed to capture an actual image of the shadow of a black hole, using a network of telescopes spread across the entire planet, all working together as if they were a single instrument the size of the Earth. What they saw was exactly what the theories had predicted. A ring of glowing gas, superheated as it spiraled inward, wrapped around a central region of pure, perfect black. The darkness at the center of that image is not the darkness of a shadow or an empty room. It is the darkness of a place where light itself has fallen out of the universe. And yet, even here, in the presence of the most consuming darkness we know, there is a strange beauty. The gas swirling around a feeding black hole can shine with the brightness of an entire galaxy, blazing across the cosmos as it makes its final plunge. Some of the brightest objects ever detected are powered by matter falling toward these dark giants, light screaming out from the very edge of the abyss just before it disappears. Brightness and darkness, birth and ending, wrapped around one another in the most extreme environment nature has ever produced. The universe holds both, and often holds them together. So far, we have talked about the darkness we can understand, the emptiness where ordinary matter is scarce, and the black holes where light is devoured. But the universe hides a far deeper darkness, one that surrounds us at every moment, passes through our bodies, and shapes the entire cosmos, yet remains completely invisible. When astronomers carefully weighed the galaxies, measuring how fast the stars orbit within them, they found something that made no sense. The galaxies were spinning far too fast. Based on the visible matter alone, all the stars and gas and dust we can actually see, the outer regions of galaxies should be flying apart, the stars flung off into space by their own speed. The gravity of the visible material was nowhere near enough to hold them together, and yet the galaxies were not flying apart. They were holding together, spinning as calm and stable wheels of stars, as if some vast, unseen source of gravity was gripping them, holding everything in place. Something was there, exerting a powerful pull, and it was completely invisible. It gave off no light. It absorbed no light. It could not be seen through any telescope, in any form of light we know how to detect. Scientists called it dark matter, and the more they looked, the more they realized how much of it there must be. For every bit of ordinary matter in the universe, the kind that makes up stars and planets and people, there appears to be several times as much of this invisible dark matter, forming enormous halos around galaxies, threading through the cosmic web, holding the entire structure of the universe together with its unseen gravity. We do not know what it is. That is worth saying plainly. Some of the greatest scientific minds alive have spent their careers searching for it, building detectors deep underground, watching for the faintest possible sign of a dark matter particle brushing against ordinary matter. So far, it has stayed hidden. We know it is there because we can feel its gravity across the cosmos. But its true nature remains one of the deepest unsolved mysteries in all of science. And it does not stop there. When astronomers measured how the expansion of the universe was changing over time, they expected to find it slowing down. The gravity of all the matter in the cosmos, gradually putting the brakes on the expansion. Instead, they found the opposite. The expansion of the universe is speeding up. Something is pushing space apart, faster and faster, driving the galaxies away from one another with ever-growing force. That something was given the name dark energy, and it turns out to be the single largest component of the entire universe. When you add it all up, the picture that emerges is staggering and deeply humbling. Everything we can see, all the stars, all the galaxies, all the glowing gas, all the ordinary matter that makes up worlds and living things, accounts for only a small fraction of the universe, a few percent of the total. The rest, the overwhelming majority, is dark. Dark matter, holding the structures together with unseen gravity. Dark energy, pushing the whole cosmos apart. Together, they make up the vast bulk of reality, and both are invisible, unknown, and utterly beyond our current understanding. Think about what this means. The universe is not mostly the bright, glittering thing we see when we look up at the stars. The universe is mostly darkness, in more ways than one. Dark in the empty gulfs between the galaxies. Dark in the voids that dwarf all other structures. Dark in the black holes that swallow light. And dark, most profoundly of all, in this hidden ocean of dark matter and dark energy that surrounds and permeates everything, invisible and unknown, quietly running the cosmos while we stand on our tiny lit island and squint into the black. There is a strange and beautiful consequence of all this emptiness and all these distances, one that changes the very meaning of the darkness you see when you look up at night. Because light takes time to travel, and because the distances are so vast, every point of light in the night sky is a message from the past. You never see a star as it is right now. You see it as it was when the light left it, crossing all those years of empty space to reach your eyes. When you look at the sun, you see it as it was about 8 minutes ago. When you look at the nearest star beyond the sun, you see light that left it more than 4 years in the past. Look at a bright star in a familiar constellation, and you might be seeing light that began its journey when your grandparents were young, or long before you were born. And when you look at a distant galaxy, you are peering back millions, sometimes billions of years into the past, seeing that galaxy not as it is, but as it was in the deep history of the universe. Some of that light left its source before the Earth had even formed. This means the night sky is not a snapshot of the present. It is a layered map of history, with each point of light showing you a different moment in the past, all mixed together into a single view. The darkness between those points is, in a sense, the parts of the past too far away for their light to have reached us yet. And as we look farther and farther out, into deeper and deeper darkness. We are looking further and further back in time, toward the very beginning. If we look far enough, we reach a wall. Not a physical wall, but a boundary in time. We reach the moment when the universe was so young, so hot, and so dense that it was not yet transparent, when light could not travel freely at all. Beyond that boundary, we cannot see, because there is no light from before it that can reach us. The faint afterglow from just after that moment, stretched and cooled over billions of years, is that same cold background radiation we spoke of earlier, the 2.7-degree whisper that fills the whole sky. It is the oldest light in existence, the earliest thing we can ever see, and it comes to us as an invisible glow, filling all the darkness in every direction. So the blackness of space is not simply empty. It is deep, in every sense of the word. It is deep in distance, stretching across gulfs that light needs eons to cross. It is deep in time, showing us the layered history of the universe all at once. And it is deep in mystery, filled with unseen matter and unseen energy that we can feel but cannot yet understand. When you stand under a dark sky and feel that small, instinctive shiver at the vast black overhead, you are responding to something real. You are a creature of the warm, bright, crowded surface of a small planet, gazing out into the true condition of the universe, which is cold and empty, and profoundly, endlessly dark. That shiver is not irrational. It is your body recognizing, in some wordless way, just how rare and fragile and precious your little island of light truly is. For most of human history, we accepted the darkness of the sky, without ever truly asking what filled it. We saw the scattered stars, gave them names, drew pictures between them, and told stories about the black spaces in between. But we had no way to look into that blackness, no way to ask what was really there. Then we built instruments to gather light, and everything changed. The first telescopes were simple things, tubes with pieces of curved glass, but they revealed a universe the naked eye had never suspected. Turn one toward a patch of sky that looked empty, and suddenly faint stars appeared, stars too dim for the eye alone to catch. The darkness, it turned out, was not as empty as it seemed. It was full of light too faint to see without help. As our instruments grew larger and more sensitive, we kept pushing them at the dark, and the dark kept giving up its secrets. One of the most profound experiments ever performed was almost absurdly simple in its idea. Astronomers took one of the most powerful telescopes ever built, pointed it at a tiny patch of sky that appeared completely, utterly empty, a spot no larger than a grain of sand held at arm's length, and left it staring at that nothing for days on end, gathering every faint scrap of light that trickled in. The patch they chose was deliberately boring, a piece of sky with no bright stars, no known galaxies, nothing to see, chosen precisely because it looked like pure darkness. Then they waited, letting the faint light accumulate, hour after hour, day after day. When the image finally came back, it stopped the world. That tiny patch of apparent nothingness, that speck of empty black sky, was not empty at all. It was filled with galaxies. Not dozens, not hundreds, thousands of galaxies, crowded into that single pinprick of darkness, each one a vast island of hundreds of billions of stars, each one so far away that its light had been traveling for billions of years to reach that lens. In a patch of sky that looked like pure emptiness, there were thousands upon thousands of entire galaxies, hidden in the dark, too faint for any eye or ordinary instrument to catch. Take that number and imagine it repeated across the entire sky, in every direction. For every equally small patch of darkness, the mind reels. The blackness overhead is not empty. It is packed with unimaginable numbers of galaxies, so distant and so faint that they simply vanish into what looks to us like nothing. The darkness is a curtain, and behind it hangs the entire history of the universe. Newer telescopes, launched into space and unfolded like great golden flowers, now peer even deeper, gathering forms of light our eyes cannot see, cutting through the dark to find galaxies so ancient that they formed in the first hundreds of millions of years after the universe began. Each time we build a more powerful eye and turn it on the emptiest, darkest patch of sky we can find, we discover the same humbling truth. The dark was never empty. It was only waiting for us to learn how to see. And every galaxy we pull out of that blackness carries the same message. The universe is far larger, far older, and far more crowded with hidden light than any of our ancestors, staring up at that same black sky, could ever have dreamed. There is an emotional weight to all of this that goes beyond the science, and it is worth sitting with for a moment. The darkness of space is not just a physical fact. It carries a kind of loneliness, a silence that touches something deep in the human spirit. For as long as we have existed, we have looked up and wondered whether we are alone. The vast emptiness we have been describing gives that question a sharp new edge. If the stars are separated by gulfs so wide that light needs years to cross them, and if the galaxies are separated by gulfs so wide that light needs millions of years, then any other beings out there are held apart from us by oceans of darkness, almost impossible to cross. Even if the universe is teeming with life, even if 1,000 other civilizations are looking up at their own dark skies at this very moment, the emptiness between us is so vast that we may never touch, never speak, never even know for certain that the others exist. A signal sent from the nearest star would take more than 4 years to arrive, and a reply would take just as long to return. A message to a nearby galaxy would take millions of years each way, longer than our species has existed. The darkness does not just separate stars. It isolates worlds. It quarantines civilizations from one another behind walls of distance and time that no ship and no signal can easily breach. And there is the silence. We have been listening to the cosmos for decades now, with great arrays of instruments turned toward the sky, straining to catch any whisper of a message from another world. So far, the darkness has answered with silence. That silence is not proof that we are alone. The universe is unimaginably large, and we have listened for only a tiny sliver of time to a tiny sliver of the sky. But the silence is real, and it presses on us. Some find in that silence a deep sadness, the possibility that in all this vastness, our small, warm world might be a rare and fragile thing, a lonely candle in an enormous dark room. Others find in it a call to cherish what we have, to protect this one bright island of life we know exists, precisely because the dark around it is so complete. Whatever you feel when you consider it, the emptiness has a way of turning your attention back toward home. When you truly grasp how cold and dark and empty most of the universe is, the ordinary things of Earth take on a startling beauty. The warmth of sunlight on your skin becomes a small miracle, light that traveled across empty space and did not vanish into the void, but found a world to land on and a face to warm. The blue of the sky becomes precious, a fragile curtain of air holding back the black, the green of a leaf, the sound of a voice, the presence of another living being. All of it becomes almost unbearably rare when set against the silent, frozen emptiness that fills nearly all of existence. The darkness of space, in the end, is not only terrifying, it is also a teacher. It shows us, by contrast, exactly how extraordinary our small, bright, crowded, noisy, living world truly is. To understand darkness fully, it helps to understand light itself, because the two are bound together in ways that are stranger than most people realize. Light is not really a thing you can hold or catch. It is a form of energy, traveling in tiny packets called photons, each one a ripple in the invisible fields that fill all of space. A photon has no weight, no mass at all, and it never rests. From the moment it is created, in the heart of a star or the glow of a distant galaxy, it moves at the one absolute speed of the universe, and it does not slow down until something absorbs it. Here is the crucial part. A photon, on its own, is invisible. You cannot see light traveling past you. You can only see light when it enters your eye, when a photon ends its journey by striking the cells at the back of your eye and giving up its energy. This is why a beam of light crossing a dark, dust-free room is invisible from the side. You see the lamp, and you see the wall it lands on, but the beam itself, streaking through the empty air between them, is unseen. You only notice a beam when there is dust, or smoke, or mist for it to scatter off of, sending some of those photons sideways into your eye. Now, carry that idea into space. In the deep emptiness between the stars and galaxies, there is almost nothing for light to scatter off of. Photons stream through that void by the countless trillions, carrying the light of distant suns, but with nothing to strike, nothing to scatter them. They simply pass on through, invisible. An astronaut floating in that emptiness would be bathed in light from a billion distant stars, and yet would see only darkness in every direction, where those stars are not directly in view. The light is there. It is passing through, but without matter to catch it and turn it back toward the eye, it remains unseen. This is the deepest reason space is dark. It is not that the universe has run out of light. The universe is flooded with light, ancient and new, streaming in every direction across all of space. It is that the universe is so empty, so utterly lacking in matter across most of its volume, that the light has almost nothing to reveal. Darkness, then, is not the opposite of light. Darkness is what happens when light has nothing to touch. And in a universe that is mostly empty, that darkness becomes the natural state of nearly everything. There is a strange comfort hidden in this idea, and a strange terror, too. The comfort is that we are never truly in the dark. Not really. Because the light of the whole universe is always streaming past us, whether we can see it or not. The terror is in realizing how alone that light travels, how far it goes without ever finding anything at all, crossing gulfs so vast and so empty that a single photon might journey for billions of years through the deepest black before it finally strikes something and, for the first time in its long existence, becomes visible. Some of the light entering your eyes on a clear night has done exactly that. It has crossed the emptiness for longer than the earth has existed, untouched, unseen, invisible the entire way, until the very last instant of its journey, when it struck the back of your eye and, at last, became a star. If the universe is mostly dark now, its future is darker still. The darkness we see today, as complete as it seems, is nothing compared to what is coming, on time scales so vast that they make the current age of the universe look like a single heartbeat. Right now, we live in a bright and busy era of cosmic history. Stars are being born in great glowing clouds of gas. Galaxies still shine with the light of countless suns. The universe, for all its emptiness, is still lit by fires burning in every direction. But this brightness is temporary. The expansion of the universe, driven by that mysterious dark energy, is accelerating, carrying the galaxies away from one another faster and faster with every passing eon. Far in the future, the galaxies beyond our own local group will be swept so far away and receding so quickly that their light will no longer be able to reach us at all. One by one, they will fade from view, sliding beyond the horizon of what we can see, until the sky beyond our own small cluster of galaxies goes completely dark. A civilization living in that distant future, looking up at their night sky, would see only their own galaxy and its nearest neighbors. The rest of the universe, all those hundreds of billions of galaxies, would have vanished entirely, carried away by the expansion of space, their light stretched into nothing, and their forms lost beyond reach. If such beings tried to work out the nature of the cosmos, they might conclude that their galaxy was the whole of existence, an island of light in an endless, empty dark, with no way of knowing that a vast universe of other galaxies had ever existed at all. The evidence would simply be gone, and the darkness deepens from there. The stars themselves are not eternal. They burn through their fuel, and one by one, over vast stretches of time, they reach the ends of their lives. Some swell and fade into cooling embers. Some collapse into dense, dark remnants. The great clouds that once gave birth to new stars are gradually used up, and eventually there is not enough fresh material left to make new suns. Star formation slows, and then, on timescales almost beyond comprehension, it stops. The last stars flicker and cool. The galaxies, once brilliant wheels of light, dim toward blackness, filled only with the cold, faded remnants of stars that once shone. The universe drifts toward a state that scientists sometimes call the long darkness, an era in which the fires have all gone out, and nothing remains but scattered dark remnants, drifting through an ever-expanding, ever-cooling void. Even the black holes, those consuming giants, do not last forever. Over spans of time so enormous that no ordinary number can capture them, even they slowly fade away, giving up their mass in the faintest possible trickle of energy, until, at last, they too are gone. And then, in the deepest future of all, the universe becomes a place of near-perfect emptiness and near-perfect dark, cold beyond cold, silent beyond silence, an endless expanse of nothing, expanding forever into a blackness with no stars, no galaxies, no light of any kind. This is not a tragedy to be feared. It lies unimaginably far in the future, so distant that the entire history of life on Earth is less than a flicker against it. But it is a truth worth holding, because it tells us something about the moment we are living in. We exist in the bright, brief morning of the universe, in the rare and fleeting era when the fires are still lit and the sky is still full of light. The darkness is coming, in the end, but it has not come yet. And that, perhaps, is the most precious fact of all. Let us return to Earth and to the thin, fragile boundary that keeps the darkness at bay. We live at the bottom of an ocean of air. It does not feel like an ocean because it is invisible and we move through it without effort. But it is there, pressing on us from every side, a blanket of gas wrapped around our world. That blanket is what gives us our blue sky, our warmth, our breathable air, and our protection from the cold, dark emptiness above. And it is astonishingly thin. If you could drive a car straight up into the sky at highway speed, you would pass through most of the atmosphere in under an hour. The layer of air that holds all our weather, all our clouds, all the breathable atmosphere that keeps us alive, is only a handful of kilometers deep. Above that, the air thins rapidly, fading toward the emptiness of space within 100 kilometers or so of the ground. 100 kilometers, that is, the distance many people drive on an ordinary afternoon. Turn that distance on its end, point it straight up, and it is the entire depth of the shell that separates us from the void. Beyond it, the darkness begins. This thin shell does more than give us air to breathe. It scatters sunlight into the soft blue of day, so that we are not blinded by a black sky with a single searing sun burning in it. It traps warmth, holding on to the heat of the day so that our nights do not plunge toward the killing cold of space. It shields us from a constant rain of high-energy particles and radiation streaming in from the sun and from deep space, particles that would otherwise damage every living thing on the surface. Without this thin veil of air, Earth would be a very different world. A dark, frozen, irradiated rock, more like the airless surface of the moon than the green and living world we know. Everything we love about our world, the warmth, the light, the color, the life, depends on this fragile layer of gas, thinner in proportion than the skin on an apple, and just above it, always waits the dark. There is something both frightening and awe-inspiring in that thought. We are not separated from the terrifying emptiness of space by some vast, comforting distance. We are separated from it by a whisper of air, a thin blue line that we could cross in the time it takes to watch a film. Every astronaut who has crossed that line describes the same overwhelming impression. Looking back at Earth from above, they see that thin blue glow of atmosphere clinging to the edge of the planet, so delicate that it looks as though a single breath could blow it away. And they see, all around it, the absolute black of space, pressing in from every side, held back only by that fragile shell. Many of them come home changed by the sight, struck by how thin the line is between our warm, living world and the cold, dark void that surrounds it. They speak of a new tenderness toward the Earth, a sudden, piercing awareness of how rare and precious and vulnerable our home truly is, floating alone in the dark, wrapped in the thinnest possible layer of air, a single bright and living world against the enormous emptiness of everything else. There is a question that trips up almost everyone the first time they really think about it. If the sun is shining in space, why is space black? Here on Earth, when the sun is out, the whole sky is bright. We are surrounded by light, and everything glows. So, how can an astronaut float in full, blazing sunlight, with the sun burning fiercely nearby, and yet see a sky that is pure, absolute black? The answer takes us back to why we see anything at all, and it reveals something profound about the nature of light and emptiness. On Earth, the sky is bright during the day because of the air. Sunlight pours into our atmosphere, strikes the countless molecules of gas, and scatters in every direction, filling the whole sky with light. The blue you see is that scattered sunlight, bounced around by the air until it seems to come from everywhere at once. The brightness of the day is not the sun alone. It is the sun's light spread across a sky full of tiny particles that catch it and glow. Now take away the air. In space, above the atmosphere, there is nothing to scatter the sunlight. The photons stream out from the sun in straight lines, racing through the emptiness, and unless they strike something directly, they simply keep going, invisible. The sun itself blazes, because you are looking straight at it, straight at the source. Any object the sunlight hits will be brilliantly lit, glowing against the black. But the space around those objects, the empty void between them, has nothing to catch the light, and so it stays dark, even as the sunlight floods through it. This creates the strange, stark quality of light in space that photographs from beyond the atmosphere always reveal. Objects are lit with harsh, brilliant clarity on the side facing the sun, and plunged into deep, inky shadow on the side facing away. There is no soft glow filling in the shadows, no scattered light softening the edges, because there is no air to do the scattering, just brilliant light, and absolute dark, meeting at a knife-sharp edge. An astronaut standing in sunlight in open space casts a shadow that is not gray, but black, a sharp cut of pure darkness, because nothing bounces light into it. Their sunlit side blazes, while the shadowed side is lost in the dark. This is the true face of light in an empty universe. Not the soft, all-encompassing brightness we know on Earth, but a stark contrast between fierce illumination and total blackness, with almost nothing in between. Our gentle, glowing daylight is a gift of the air, a softening of the harsh reality of space. Beyond the atmosphere, the light is naked and unforgiving, and the darkness is always right there beside it, sharing the same sky. When we look at images taken from space and see that jet-black background behind a brilliantly lit spacecraft or astronaut, we are seeing the real nature of the cosmos with the comforting veil of atmosphere stripped away. Brightness and blackness, side by side, exactly as they are throughout nearly all of the universe. Here is a thought that turns the whole idea of emptiness inside out. We have spoken about how empty space is, how the vast reaches between the stars and galaxies contain almost nothing at all. But the emptiness does not stop at the largest scales. It reaches all the way down into the very matter that makes up you and this world and everything you have ever touched. Consider a single atom, the tiny building block of all ordinary matter. At the center of every atom sits a nucleus, a dense knot of particles that holds nearly all of the atom's mass. Around that nucleus, at a relatively enormous distance, drift the electrons, the lightweight particles that give the atom its outer edge. Now here is the astonishing part. The space between the nucleus and the electrons is, for all practical purposes, empty. And that space is vast compared to the particles themselves. If you could scale up a single atom until its nucleus was the size of a small marble placed at the center of a large stadium, the electrons would be like tiny specks whirling around out near the distant seats, and everything in between, the entire volume of the stadium, would be empty. That is what matter is. Not solid, packed stuff, but tiny points of substance separated by enormous, echoing emptiness. Every solid object you have ever encountered, the chair beneath you, the ground under your feet, your own hand, is overwhelmingly empty space. The atoms that make you are almost entirely void, with only the faintest sprinkling of actual particles held together by invisible forces. If you could somehow remove all the empty space from within the atoms of a human being, squeezing every particle together until they touched, the entire body would shrink to a speck far too small to see. The same is true for the whole Earth. Strip away the emptiness inside its atoms, and our vast planet would collapse to a ball you could hold in your hand. The solidity we feel, the firmness of the ground, the resistance of a wall against our touch, is not the touch of solid matter against solid matter. It is the push of invisible forces, the electric repulsion between the outer edges of atoms, holding us up, keeping us from falling through a world that is, in truth, mostly empty. So the emptiness of space is not just something out there in the distant dark between the stars. It is here, inside you, in every atom of your being. You are, at the deepest level, mostly nothing, a delicate pattern of tiny particles held together across vast internal gulfs of empty space by forces you cannot see. The universe is empty at its grandest scale, in the voids between galaxies, and it is empty at its smallest scale, in the heart of every atom. Emptiness is not a rare feature of the cosmos. It is the fundamental fabric of reality, woven through everything, from the largest structures we can imagine down to the tiniest specks of matter that make up the world and everyone in it. We are patterns of light and force, drawn across a canvas that is, almost entirely, dark and empty space. And somehow, out of all that emptiness, here we are, thinking, feeling, looking up, and wondering. Against all this emptiness and darkness, the stars stand out as something almost miraculous. They are the rare places where the universe gathers itself into fire. A star is what happens when enough of the thin, scattered gas of space is drawn together by gravity into a single enormous ball, squeezed so tightly at its core that the very atoms are forced to fuse, releasing floods of energy and light. Our own sun is such a star, an ordinary one by cosmic standards, and yet it is the source of nearly all the light and warmth we have ever known. Every sunrise, every warm afternoon, every green and growing thing, every drop of rain and breath of wind is powered, in the end, by the light of that one nearby star. The sun pours out an unimaginable amount of energy every second, more than our entire civilization has used in all of its history, and it has been doing so for billions of years, with billions more still to come. And yet, for all its power, the sun is a tiny, isolated island of light in an ocean of dark. Its warmth reaches out across the solar system, fading with distance, until, out past the farthest planets, it becomes little more than a bright point among the stars, no longer able to hold back the cold. Beyond that, the sun's light continues on, out into interstellar space, but spreads so thin across such vast distances that it becomes just another faint glimmer, one more star in the darkness, as seen from any world circling another sun. This is the fate of all starlight. It blazes brilliantly at its source, and then it spreads out into the emptiness, growing fainter and fainter, until it is swallowed by the sheer scale of the dark. The stars are not failing to light the universe out of weakness. They are simply too few and too far apart, and the emptiness between them is simply too vast. Even the combined light of every star in every galaxy, all those countless trillions of suns, is not enough to push back the darkness that fills the space between them. The universe is not dark because the stars are dim. The universe is dark because it is so unimaginably large and so profoundly empty that even the fierce light of countless suns is lost in it, scattered across distances so great that most of space never receives more than the faintest whisper of their glow. And this is what makes each star, and especially our own sun, so precious. They are the exceptions. They are the places where, against all the odds, the thin, cold gas of the cosmos gathered itself into fire and light and warmth, creating small pockets of brightness in the endless dark. Around those rare fires, on the rare worlds that circle them at just the right distance, there is the possibility of warmth, of liquid water, of chemistry complex enough to give rise to life. We are children of one such fire, warmed by one such star, living on one such world, in a small bright bubble of light and life, surrounded on all sides by the vast, cold, empty dark. When you feel the sun on your face, remember what it truly is. Not just a light in the sky, but a rare and precious fire. One of the few places in all the emptiness where the universe blazes brightly enough to make a world like ours possible. Let us take a slow journey outward, step by step, to feel how the darkness deepens the farther we travel from home. Begin on the surface of Earth, in your warm, bright, familiar world. Rise up through the atmosphere, and within 100 kilometers, the blue fades to black, and the stars come out even in daylight. Keep going, out past the moon, that pale companion so far away that its light takes more than a second to reach us, and already the Earth has shrunk to a blue marble hanging in the dark. Push outward past the inner planets, past the sun's fierce warmth, and the light begins to thin. By the time you reach the outer worlds, the giant planets far from the sun, the sunlight has grown weak and pale, and the sun itself, though still the brightest thing in the sky, is no longer a warming presence, just a brilliant point in a deepening dark. Continue outward, past the last of the planets, past the icy bodies that drift at the edge of the sun's influence, and you cross into true interstellar space, the emptiness between the stars. Here the sun becomes just one more star among many, its warmth gone entirely, its light one glimmer in a field of glimmers. For years of travel at the speed of light, there is nothing around you but the thin, cold interstellar medium and the vast dark, until at last you approach the nearest neighboring star. But we are only just beginning. Push on, star by star, across the great disk of our galaxy, and you travel for tens of thousands of years at the speed of light, past hundreds of billions of suns, most of them separated from their neighbors by those same enormous, dark gulfs. Reach the edge of the galaxy, and look outward, and now you face a darkness of a wholly different order. Between our galaxy and the next lies a gulf so wide that the light crossing it needs millions of years to make the journey. Our galaxy belongs to a small gathering of galaxies held loosely together by gravity that we call our local group. Even within this group, the nearest large neighbor galaxy is so far away that its light left it more than 2 million years ago. And our local group, in turn, is just one small cluster among countless others, separated from the next by even greater gulfs of empty dark. Zoom out far enough, and the galaxies themselves become mere points of light, gathered into the threads and sheets of the cosmic web, with those enormous voids yawning between them. At this scale, everything we have ever known, the Earth, the Sun, the entire galaxy of hundreds of billions of stars, shrinks to a single, insignificant speck of light, lost among countless others, adrift in an ocean of darkness that stretches beyond the edge of what we can even see. This is the journey from your warm, bright bedroom to the true scale of the cosmos. At every step, the light grows thinner, the cold grows deeper, and the darkness grows more complete. And the astonishing thing is that we made this whole journey in our minds in just a few moments, while in reality, it would take longer than the age of the universe to actually travel even a fraction of the way. That is how vast the darkness is. That is how small and bright and rare our little island of light truly is, set against the enormity of the empty dark. It is worth pausing to think about how differently our ancestors saw this same darkness that we now understand. For nearly all of human history, the night sky was a source of wonder, fear, and meaning, but not of the kind of understanding we have today. Our distant ancestors, gathered around their fires under skies far darker than most of us ever see now, looked up at a band of stars so thick and bright that it seemed to pour across the heavens like spilled light. They did not know that those scattered points were distant suns, separated by unimaginable gulfs. They did not know that the faint smudges among them were entire other galaxies, each holding hundreds of billions of stars. They saw patterns, and they told stories, weaving the lights into hunters and animals and heroes, using the sky to mark the seasons and guide their journeys across land and sea. The darkness between the stars was, to them, simply the backdrop, the black cloth on which the lights were hung. They could not have imagined that the darkness itself was the main truth, that it stretched on for distances beyond all comprehension, filled with unseen galaxies and invisible matter, and the cold afterglow of the universe's birth. For most of human history, we lived under a sky far richer and darker than the one most of us know today. In our modern world, the glow of our cities has washed much of that darkness away. Step outside in a large city at night, and you might see only a handful of the brightest stars, the rest drowned out by the light we ourselves have made. We have, in a strange way, pushed back the cosmic darkness with our own small fires, and in doing so, we have lost sight of the very thing our ancestors knew so intimately, the vast, star-strewn dark overhead. To truly see the night sky as they saw it, you have to travel far from the cities, out to a remote place where no artificial light reaches, and let your eyes adjust to the dark. When you do, the sky transforms. Hundreds, then thousands of stars emerge from the black, and that great glowing band, the combined light of countless distant suns in our own galaxy, arches overhead in a way that can stop your breath. And once you understand what you are truly looking at, the experience becomes something more than beautiful. You are seeing the light of countless suns, each one impossibly far away, each one separated from the others by oceans of dark. You are seeing ancient light, some of it older than the human species, some of it older than the Earth. You are looking out into the true structure of the universe, the rare islands of light scattered across an overwhelming emptiness. Our ancestors gazed at that same sky with wonder and fear, sensing its vastness without understanding it. We are the first generations who can look up and know, at least in part, what we are truly seeing. We know how far the stars really are. We know what fills the darkness between them. We know that we are standing on a small, warm world, wrapped in a thin shell of air, gazing out into an ancient, cold, and nearly endless dark. And knowing all of that, the sight becomes, if anything, more wondrous, not less. For we are the small, fragile creatures who somehow, against all the odds, woke up inside this vast dark universe and learned to understand it. The darkness of space is not only empty and cold, it is also filled with things we cannot see, streaming invisibly through the void, and some of them are dangerous. Even in the deepest, darkest emptiness between the stars, there is a constant, invisible rain of high-energy particles racing through space at nearly the speed of light. We call them cosmic rays, though they are not really rays at all, but tiny fragments of atoms flung outward across the galaxy by the most violent events in the universe. When a massive star reaches the end of its life and collapses, it can erupt in an explosion so powerful that, for a brief time, it outshines an entire galaxy. These explosions hurl matter and energy out into space with tremendous force, accelerating particles to almost the speed of light and sending them streaming across the cosmos for millions of years. Some of these particles, having traveled unimaginable distances through the dark, eventually reach our own solar system, and a few of them strike the Earth, or would strike anyone traveling unprotected through space. Here on the surface of our world, we are shielded from most of this invisible bombardment by our atmosphere and by the magnetic field that wraps around our planet. That magnetic field, generated deep within the Earth, reaches far out into space and deflects much of the incoming radiation, steering it away from the surface, protecting the delicate life below. But out in open space, beyond that protection, the danger is real. An astronaut traveling far from Earth, out beyond the magnetic shield, would be exposed to this constant stream of high-energy particles, invisible and silent, passing through their body, through their ship, through everything. Over long journeys, this exposure becomes one of the greatest challenges of deep space travel. A hazard that comes not from the cold or the emptiness directly, but from the invisible things that fill the dark. The darkness, in other words, is not truly empty, even where it seems most void. It is threaded with invisible energy, with particles born in the depths of distant stars, with radiation streaming in from the violent corners of the universe. Our warm, bright world sits protected at the bottom of its ocean of air, behind its invisible magnetic shield, while just beyond, the dark hums with unseen energy. This is one more layer of the strange truth about space. What looks like pure, still emptiness is actually alive with invisible motion, with particles racing through it at tremendous speed, carrying the echoes of distant catastrophes across the void. We do not feel it, here, on the surface, safe beneath our protective layers. But it is there, all around us, all the time, streaming down from the dark, a constant reminder that the emptiness of space is far stranger and far busier than it first appears. And it reminds us, too, of how much has to go right for a world like ours to exist. Not only must there be a nearby star for warmth and light, and a world at just the right distance for liquid water, but there must also be shelter from the invisible dangers of the dark, an atmosphere to absorb the radiation, a magnetic field to turn it aside. Strip any of these away, and the darkness reaches in, and life becomes far harder or impossible. We live in a rare and well-defended oasis, surrounded by an emptiness that is not only cold and dark, but quietly, invisibly dangerous. Here is another twist in the story of cosmic darkness, and it may be the most surprising of all. The blackness you see when you look up at the night sky is only black to your eyes. To an instrument that could see all forms of light, the sky would not be dark at all. It would blaze with light in every direction. The light your eyes can detect, the colors of the rainbow from red to violet, is only a tiny slice of a much larger spectrum of light that fills the universe. Beyond the red end of what you can see lies infrared light, the light of warmth, given off by anything with heat. Beyond that lie microwaves and radio waves, forms of light with longer and longer wavelengths. And beyond the violet end lie ultraviolet light, and then the far more energetic forms, the light given off by the most violent and extreme events in the cosmos. Your eyes are blind to all of it. You can only see that one narrow band in the middle, and everything else passes by unseen. But it is there, all around you, all the time. The dark night sky, if you could see in these other forms of light, would be revealed as a place of extraordinary activity. In infrared light, the cold clouds of gas and dust between the stars would glow softly, revealing the hidden nurseries where new stars are being born, places invisible to ordinary sight. In radio waves, the whole sky would hum with signals from distant galaxies, from the swirling gas around black holes, from the tangled magnetic fields threading through space. And filling the entire sky, in every direction, would be that faint, cold glow of microwaves, the ancient afterglow of the birth of the universe itself, invisible to the eye, but shining softly everywhere you might point a sensitive enough instrument. The darkness, in other words, is a matter of perspective. To us, with our limited eyes, space is overwhelmingly black. But that blackness is a kind of blindness, a limitation of the particular sliver of light we happen to be able to see. The universe itself is not truly dark. It is glowing, quietly and constantly, in forms of light our eyes were never built to detect. This is why our telescopes have become so powerful, not just because they gather more visible light, but because they have learned to see in these other realms, to open windows onto the invisible universe. Each new kind of instrument, each new form of light we learn to detect, reveals a cosmos richer and stranger than the one before, hidden all along behind the veil of our own perception. There is something humbling in this. We stand beneath a sky that seems black and empty, and we imagine we are seeing the universe as it is. But we are seeing only the faintest fraction of it, the narrow band our eyes can catch, while all around us the cosmos blazes in colors we cannot name, telling stories we can only read through our instruments. The darkness of space, then, is partly the darkness of our own limits. The universe is speaking constantly, in 1,000 voices of light. We have only just begun to learn how to listen. We keep returning to the idea of emptiness, of the void, of space as pure nothing. But at the very deepest level, physics tells us something astonishing. Truly empty space, the perfect vacuum, may not exist at all. Even in the emptiest region imaginable, a place with no atoms, no light, no matter of any kind, space is not truly nothing. According to our best understanding of the physical world, the vacuum itself is alive with activity, a restless, seething foam of energy at the smallest scales. In the strange rules that govern the tiniest levels of reality, particles are constantly flickering into and out of existence, appearing for the briefest possible instant and then vanishing again, borrowing energy from the vacuum and paying it back so quickly that they can never be directly caught. These fleeting particles are sometimes called virtual particles, and they fill all of space, even the deepest void, with a constant, invisible shimmer of appearance and disappearance. The empty vacuum, in other words, is not a still, dead nothing. It is a churning sea of possibility, restless at the smallest scale, humming with energy that never quite settles into silence. This is not just a strange idea on paper. The effects of this vacuum energy have been measured in careful experiments, revealing tiny forces that arise from the restless activity of empty space itself. The perfect nothing, it turns out, pushes back, and there may be even more to it. Many scientists believe that this energy of empty space is connected to the mysterious dark energy we spoke of earlier, the force that is pushing the universe apart faster and faster. If that is true, then the very emptiness of space, the restless energy of the vacuum, is driving the expansion of the entire cosmos, shaping the ultimate fate of everything. The nothing is not passive. The nothing is doing something. This is perhaps the strangest truth of all. We began by describing space as empty, dark, and cold, a vast void of nearly perfect nothing. And in one sense, that is exactly right. But when we look closely enough, at the smallest possible scales, that nothing dissolves into a restless, shimmering activity, a foam of energy that fills all of space and may hold the key to the destiny of the universe. Emptiness, it seems, is not simple. It is not the absence of everything. It is its own kind of something, subtle and strange, alive with a quiet energy we are only beginning to understand. The darkness of space is deep in every way we can measure. Deep in distance, deep in time, deep in cold and silence. And now we find it is deep in mystery, even at the smallest scale, where the empty vacuum reveals itself to be far more than nothing. Everywhere we look, from the largest voids between galaxies to the tiniest flickers within the vacuum, the universe keeps teaching us the same humbling lesson. What looks like emptiness is never quite as empty as it seems. There is always more hidden in the dark than our first glance reveals. When you gather all of this together, a picture emerges that is both frightening and strangely beautiful. The universe is overwhelmingly dark. It is dark in the vast gulfs between the stars, where a single lonely atom drifts in each small volume of space. It is dark in the even vaster gulfs between the galaxies, where the emptiness stretches to something close to perfect. It is dark in the enormous cosmic voids, those titanic bubbles of near nothing that make up so much of the cosmos. It is dark in the black holes that swallow light and never give it back. It is dark in the invisible ocean of dark matter and dark energy that surrounds and shapes everything unseen. And it will grow darker still. As the universe expands and cools and the fires of the stars burn out, one by one, over the long ages to come. Against all of that darkness, life is almost impossibly rare and fragile. As far as we know, our small world is the only place in all that vast emptiness where life exists at all. We have searched the nearby worlds and found only cold rock and poison air. We have listened to the stars and heard only silence. For all we know, in the entire observable universe, across all those countless galaxies and all those countless stars, life may be a rare spark indeed, and thinking, wondering, conscious life rarer still. And yet, here we are. Somehow, on this one small world, wrapped in its thin shell of air, warmed by its one nearby star, the universe gave rise to life. And not just life, but life that could look up at the dark and wonder about it. Life that could measure the distances to the stars, weigh the invisible matter, trace the history of the cosmos back nearly to its beginning. We are the part of the universe that woke up and looked around. We are the cosmos, becoming aware of itself, a tiny flicker of light and thought in the middle of an overwhelming dark. When you understand this, the darkness stops being only frightening. It becomes the backdrop against which the miracle of your own existence stands out in sharp relief. Every warm day, every shared laugh, every quiet moment of being alive is happening against a cosmic background of almost total cold and dark and emptiness. The rarity of it is what makes it precious. If the universe were full of warm, living worlds in every direction, our own might seem ordinary, but it is not. Our world is a rare and fragile exception, a small, bright island of life in an ocean of dark that stretches beyond the edge of sight. And that is precisely what makes it so worth cherishing. The terrifying reality of how dark space really is turns out to carry within it a quiet gift. It shows us, more clearly than anything else could, just how extraordinary it is to be here at all, to be warm, to be alive, to be able to look up into the vast dark and understand, at least a little, what we are seeing. The darkness is real, and it is vast, and it is almost beyond comprehension. But so is the wonder of being a small, living, thinking creature, gazing out from a warm and fragile world into the enormous, ancient, beautiful, dark, and daring to try to understand it. Let us return, one more time, to that image we began with, of a single human being alone in the deepest dark, because there is more to feel there than we first uncovered. Imagine drifting in the emptiest space between the galaxies, far from any star, far from any world. At first, the mind reaches for something familiar, some reference point, some way to orient itself. But there is nothing. No ground, no horizon, no up, no down. No sound to break the silence, no light to shape a scene, no warmth to reassure the skin. Just the black, in every direction, unbroken and unending. A human being placed in that emptiness would be facing something our species has almost never encountered: a true and total absence of the world. For all our history, no matter how far we wandered, there was always ground beneath us, sky above, the sounds of wind and water and living things, the light of sun or moon or stars. We have never truly been in nothing. The deep dark of intergalactic space is the closest thing to nothing that exists, and the mind, faced with it, would struggle. Without any input to work with, the senses would begin to fail and falter. The eyes, straining and finding nothing, might conjure faint phantom lights. The sense of balance, with no gravity to guide it, would lose all meaning. The passage of time itself might become uncertain, with no day or night, no motion, no change of any kind to measure it by. In that emptiness, a person would be thrown back entirely on themselves, on the small, warm world contained within their own body and mind, the beat of the heart, the rhythm of the breath, the flow of their own thoughts. That inner world would become the only world, and perhaps that is the deepest lesson the darkness has to offer. Out there, in the vast, cold emptiness, the only warmth, the only light, the only life, would be the small flame carried within. We are, each of us, tiny bright points of warmth and awareness, adrift in a universe that is overwhelmingly cold and dark and empty. And what we carry within us, our thoughts, our feelings, our connections to one another, is, as far as we know, among the rarest and most precious things in all of existence. The darkness of space could easily make a person feel small and insignificant, a speck of nothing in an ocean of nothing. But there is another way to see it. In all that vast emptiness, the light and warmth we carry within us and share with one another may be almost unique. The universe is enormous and cold and dark, and we are small and warm and brief. But the smallness and the brevity and the warmth are exactly what make us matter. We are the rare exception, the improbable flame, the tiny corner of the cosmos where the darkness gave way, just a little, to light and thought and love. To understand how dark space truly is, then, is not only to feel a chill of fear, it is also to feel a surge of gratitude and of tenderness for this small, bright world and for one another, and for the astonishing, improbable fact that, in all that dark, we are here, awake, together, alive. There is one final way of looking at the darkness that turns the whole story on its head. We have spoken of the dark as an ending, as the cold and empty fate toward which the universe is drifting. But the dark is also a beginning. Everything that exists, every star, every world, every living thing, came out of that same emptiness. In the beginning, the universe was almost perfectly smooth, a nearly uniform sea of matter and energy, with only the tiniest ripples in it. Those ripples, faint variations in the density of the early cosmos, were the seeds of everything. Where the young universe was very slightly denser, gravity began, ever so slowly, to pull matter together. Over hundreds of millions of years, those slight overdense regions gathered more and more material, drawing in the thin gas that filled space, until at last, in the densest knots, the gas grew hot and heavy enough to ignite into the first stars. And around those slightly denser regions, the emptiness deepened, as matter drained away toward the growing structures, leaving the underdense regions to expand into the great voids we see today. So the cosmic web, with its bright threads of galaxies and its enormous dark voids, was written into the universe from almost the very beginning, in those faint ripples of the early cosmos. The light and the dark grew up together, two sides of the same unfolding. The very emptiness that surrounds us now is the flip side of the gathering that made the stars. For matter to come together into bright, warm places, it had to be drawn out of the spaces between, leaving them emptier than ever. The darkness and the light are not opponents. They are partners, born together, shaped by the same gravity, evolving side by side across the whole history of the universe. Even the atoms that make up your body were forged in this dance of light and dark. The simplest elements were created in the first moments after the birth of the universe, in the hot, dense fireball of the beginning. But the heavier elements, the carbon in your cells, the oxygen you breathe, the iron in your blood, the calcium in your bones, were built inside stars, forged in their blazing cores over millions of years, and then scattered out into the dark when those stars reached the ends of their lives. Every heavy atom in your body was once inside a star and was thrown out into the emptiness when that star came apart, drifting through the dark for ages before gathering, at last, into the cloud that became our sun, our world, and eventually, you. You are made of the ashes of ancient stars, carried across the dark, gathered together against all odds into a living, thinking being. The darkness is not only where we are going, it is where we came from. It is the vast, empty stage on which the whole drama of matter and light and life has played out, from the first faint ripples in the early cosmos to the warmth of the world beneath your feet. To understand the darkness of space, then, is to understand our own deepest origins. We are children of the dark and the light together, made of star ash carried across the empty gulfs, gathered into a small bright world in the middle of an overwhelming, ancient night. We have sent our own machines out into this darkness, and their journeys tell us, in the most concrete way, just how empty and vast the dark truly is. Over the past decades, we have launched spacecraft to explore the worlds of our solar system, and a few of them have traveled so far that they have now crossed into interstellar space, the true dark between the stars. These are the farthest things human hands have ever made. They have been traveling for decades, moving at tens of thousands of kilometers per hour, and even at those tremendous speeds, they have only just begun to leave our own tiny corner of the galaxy behind. Think about that for a moment. These craft have been racing outward for longer than many people have been alive, moving faster than any bullet, and they have barely stepped past the doorstep of the sun. The nearest star, if one of them happened to be heading toward it, would still be tens of thousands of years away at their current speed. That is how vast the emptiness is. Even our fastest machines, traveling for a human lifetime, cover only the smallest fraction of the distance to the very nearest neighboring star. As these craft journey outward, they carry instruments that measure the space around them, and what they find confirms everything we have described. The farther they travel from the sun, the emptier and colder and darker their surroundings become. The sunlight fades to a faint point behind them. The thin gas around them grows thinner still. They drift now through a darkness so complete that the sun is just one more star among the countless others scattered across the black. And they carry with them something else, a message, placed aboard in case, someday, against all the odds, one of them should be found by some other being in the distant future. A greeting sent out into the dark, a small token of the warm and living world that made them, cast into the vast emptiness with almost no hope of ever being received, but sent anyway, as a gesture of who we are. There is something deeply moving in this. We, the small, warm creatures of a single bright world, have reached out into the overwhelming dark, sending our machines and our messages out into an emptiness so vast that they will drift for millions of years, most likely never encountering anything at all. And yet we sent them. We could not resist reaching out, could not resist the urge to explore, to understand, to leave some mark of our existence in the great dark that surrounds us. Those craft will outlast us. Long after our world has changed beyond recognition, long after the sun itself has changed, those small machines will still be drifting through the dark, carrying their silent greeting, a memory of a warm blue world that once looked up at the stars and dared to send a piece of itself out into the emptiness. They are our farthest reach into the darkness, and they measure, in the most direct way possible, just how deep and empty and vast that darkness truly is. They remind us that the emptiness is not merely an abstract idea, but a real and physical place, one that our own machines are crossing right now, drifting silently through the cold and the dark, carrying a small piece of our warmth out into the endless night. So why does any of this matter? Why should it change anything to know that space is so dark, so cold, so empty, so vast beyond understanding? It matters because it changes how we see ourselves and how we see our home. For most of history, we imagined the Earth as the center of everything, a solid and permanent stage on which the drama of life unfolded, with the heavens as a mere decoration overhead. The more we learned, the smaller our place became. We learned that the Earth is a planet, one of several circling the sun. We learned that the sun is a star, one of hundreds of billions in our galaxy. We learned that our galaxy is one of hundreds of billions in the universe. And we learned that all of it, all those stars and galaxies, is scattered thinly across an emptiness so vast and so dark that the bright and living parts of the cosmos are little more than rare specks in an ocean of night. Each step made us smaller. Each discovery pushed us further from the center, deeper into the realization that we are a tiny, fragile thing in an enormous and largely empty universe. That could be a cause for despair, and for some, it is. To feel so small, so temporary, so surrounded by cold and dark can be frightening and lonely. But there is another way to hold it, and it may be the wiser way. The very same understanding that makes us small also reveals how precious and rare we are. In all that emptiness, warmth is rare. Light is rare. Life is rare. And thinking, feeling, wondering life, the kind that can look up and grasp the vastness of it all, may be rarest of all. We are not diminished by the darkness. We are made precious by it. The knowledge of how dark space really is should not make us feel worthless. It should make us feel astonished and grateful and tender toward this small, bright world and toward one another. It should make us want to protect this fragile island of life, to cherish the warmth and the light and the company we have, precisely because the dark around us is so complete. When you next step outside on a clear night and feel the cold press of the dark overhead, let it teach you both things at once. Let it remind you how vast and empty and ancient the universe is. And let it remind you how extraordinary it is that you are here at all, warm and alive and aware, gazing up into that dark with eyes that can see, and a mind that can wonder, and a heart that can feel the beauty and the terror of it together. That is the gift the darkness gives, if we are willing to receive it. Not only fear, but wonder. Not only smallness, but preciousness. Not only the terror of the empty dark, but a deeper love for the small, bright miracle of being alive within it. Consider, for a moment, the sheer improbability of the light you are experiencing right now. Wherever you are, there is almost certainly light around you. The glow of a screen, the warmth of a lamp, the soft light of a window, perhaps the sun itself pouring in through the glass. You are swimming in light, surrounded by it, so used to it that you barely notice it at all. Now hold that experience up against the truth of the cosmos. In most of the universe, there is no such light. There is no screen, no lamp, no window, no gentle glow. There is only the deep, cold, unbroken dark, stretching on for distances that light itself needs eons to cross. The ordinary, everyday brightness that fills your life is one of the rarest conditions in all of existence. You live, every moment, inside a small pocket of light and warmth, so unusual that most of the universe has nothing like it anywhere nearby. And that light has a story. The light from your window traces back to the sun, that rare nearby fire, forged from the gathered gas of an ancient cloud. The energy in your lamp traces back, through wires and generators, to fuels and forces that ultimately draw on the same cosmic inheritance. The light of stars, the warmth of a living world. Every bit of light you know is a small local victory against the overwhelming dark, a tiny place where, against the odds, brightness has gathered and held. We take it so completely for granted. We flip a switch and expect light. We wake in the morning and expect the sun. We have built our whole lives inside a bubble of brightness so reliable that we forget how extraordinary it is. But step outside that bubble, even in imagination, and the truth comes rushing back. The default state of the universe is not light. It is dark. The default state is not warmth, it is cold. The default state is not the crowded, noisy, living world we know. It is silence and emptiness and the endless night between the stars. Our little pocket of light is the exception, carved out of the dark by the rare gathering of matter into a star, and the rarer still emergence of a living world in its warmth. When you truly grasp this, something shifts. The ordinary becomes extraordinary. The light that fills your room, the warmth on your skin, the simple fact of being able to see, all of it becomes a small daily miracle, a rare gift held out against the vast and ancient dark. We are creatures of light, born in the warmth of a rare star, living in a bright bubble carved out of an overwhelming darkness. And most of us go our whole lives without ever once feeling how astonishing that truly is. To understand how dark space really is, then, is also to understand how bright our own small world is by comparison, and to feel, perhaps for the first time, the full wonder of the light we so easily take for granted. The dark makes the light precious. The emptiness makes our small, crowded world a marvel. And the cold, silent night that fills nearly all the universe makes the warmth and light and life of this one small world feel like exactly what it is, a rare and beautiful flame, burning quietly against the dark. There is a particular kind of cold in space that is worth pausing on, because it behaves in ways our everyday experience never prepares us for. On Earth, when something is cold, it is usually because it is surrounded by cold air or cold water, carrying the heat away by direct contact. Step into a freezing room, and the cold air steals the warmth from your skin almost at once. But in the vacuum of space, there is no air, no water, nothing touching you at all. And so heat cannot be carried away by contact because there is nothing to carry it. The only way for an object in space to lose its warmth is to radiate it away as light, slowly glowing its heat out into the surrounding dark. This makes the cold of space a strange and patient thing. An object in sunlight can become blazingly hot on one side, while its shadowed side, radiating heat away into the void, grows bitterly cold. The two extremes can exist within the same object at the same time, separated only by the line between light and shadow. And in the deep dark, far from any star, with no sunlight at all, an object will simply radiate its warmth away, cooling ever closer to the temperature of the empty universe itself, that faint whisper just above the absolute floor of cold. There is no wind to speed the chill, no ice to touch, no freezing water. Only the slow, silent loss of warmth into the endless dark, until the object matches the cold of the void around it and can grow no colder, because there is nothing colder left for it to reach. This is the true face of cold in space, not a biting wind or a freezing sea, but a patient, silent radiating away of all warmth into an emptiness that gives nothing back. It is a cold that comes not from something cold pressing against you, but from the simple, relentless absence of anything to keep you warm. And it fills nearly all of the universe. Every object drifting in the deep dark, every lonely world without a nearby star, every scrap of matter lost in the void between the galaxies, is slowly surrendering its warmth to that patient cold, cooling toward the faint chill that is the natural temperature of the empty cosmos. Our own world escapes this fate only because of the sun. The steady flood of sunlight, pouring in day after day, replaces the warmth our world radiates away into space, keeping us in a delicate balance, warm enough for oceans and rivers and living things. Take away the sun, and our world would begin, slowly and inexorably, to cool, radiating its warmth into the dark, the oceans freezing over, the air itself eventually falling as frost, until our once living world matched the deep cold of the void. That is how thin the margin is. Our warmth is not a permanent possession. It is a constant gift from a nearby fire, endlessly replacing what we lose to the dark. The cold of space is always there, always waiting, held back only by the steady light of our star. We live, every moment, in a delicate balance between the warmth pouring in from the sun and the cold radiating out into the endless night. And it is that balance, and that balance alone, that keeps our world alive. There is another aspect of the emptiness that deserves attention, and it concerns just how much of the universe is made of these vast, lonely stretches compared to everything else. When astronomers try to picture the universe as a whole, they sometimes describe it as resembling a great cosmic foam, or a sponge, or a web of interconnected threads. The bright galaxies gather along the threads and at the knots where the threads cross, forming the walls and filaments of this immense structure. And between the threads, filling most of the volume, are the great dark voids. If you could somehow shrink the entire observable universe down to a size you could hold in your imagination and look at all at once, you would see that the bright, matter-filled regions form only a thin tracery, a delicate lacework of light, while the overwhelming bulk of the volume is dark and empty. The galaxies, for all their grandeur, cling to the edges of the emptiness like frost on a windowpane, tracing out the boundaries of the great dark voids. Most of the universe, by far, is that emptiness. The bright web of galaxies is the exception, a thin, bright skeleton stretched across an overwhelming dark. And within that web, the galaxies themselves are mostly empty, vast wheels of stars separated by enormous gulfs. And within the galaxies, the stars are mostly empty, tiny fires separated by light years of dark. And, within the stars and worlds, the atoms themselves are mostly empty, tiny particles separated by echoing internal voids. At every scale, from the largest to the smallest, the same truth holds. The universe is mostly emptiness, and the bright, solid, warm things we know are the rare exceptions, scattered thinly through an overwhelming dark. This is not a flaw in the universe, or a sign that something is missing. It is simply the nature of things, the way reality is built, from the grandest scales down to the smallest. Emptiness is the canvas. Light and matter are the rare and precious paint, scattered thinly across it, forming the delicate patterns that make up everything we know and love. And we, in all our smallness, are among the most delicate and precious patterns of all. Tiny gatherings of ancient star ash, warmed by a rare fire. Aware of ourselves and of the vast dark that surrounds us, holding our small light against the night. It is worth dwelling on what it would mean to actually cross one of these great voids, to travel from one thread of the cosmic web to another through the deepest emptiness. Imagine a ship, moving at the fastest speed our imaginations can grant it, setting out from the edge of one galaxy toward a distant neighbor across a cosmic void. For the entire journey, there would be nothing. No stars streaming past. No worlds to visit. No warmth, no light, no landmarks of any kind. Only the faint, distant glow of galaxies on either shore, so far away that they would seem to hang motionless for the entire crossing, no matter how fast the ship traveled. The journey would last so long that generations upon generations would be born and grow old and pass on before the far shore drew any closer. Whole lifetimes would unfold in the dark, with nothing outside the windows but the unchanging emptiness and the faint, frozen light of unreachable galaxies. Any travelers on such a voyage would live their entire lives in the void, knowing the warm, bright worlds only as stories from a distant past and a distant future, spending their days suspended in the deepest dark the universe has to offer. This is the scale of the emptiness. It is not a gap that can be crossed in a moment, or a lifetime, or even the whole span of a civilization. It is a gulf so vast that crossing it would be the work of ages, a journey through a darkness so complete that it would swallow whole histories in its silence. And yet, even this staggering emptiness is only a single void, one bubble among countless others, each separated from the next by threads of galaxies, the whole structure repeating on and on, void after void, thread after thread, far beyond the edge of anything we can see. The universe is not merely large. It is large in a way that defeats every attempt to hold it in the mind. A vastness so complete that even light, racing across it for the entire age of the cosmos, has only managed to show us a small portion of the whole. There is a strange peace to be found in sitting with this, once the initial fear has passed. The vast dark does not threaten us, not really. It simply is, ancient and enormous and indifferent, the great silent backdrop against which our small warm lives play out. We will never cross those voids. We will never reach those distant galaxies. We are bound, almost certainly, to our own small corner of the cosmos, our own tiny thread of light in the great dark web. But that boundedness is not only a limitation, it is also a kind of belonging. This small bright corner is ours. This warm world, this nearby star, this thin shell of air, this company of living things is our home in the dark, the one place in all the vast emptiness where we belong. We did not choose to be born into a universe this dark and this empty, but we were, and here we are, and the darkness, far from diminishing us, only makes our small warm home more precious by contrast. When you understand how dark the universe truly is, you stop taking the light for granted. You stop taking the warmth for granted. You stop taking one another for granted. The vast dark teaches us, in the end, to love the small bright things all the more, because we finally understand how rare they are. And perhaps that is the deepest reason to contemplate the darkness at all. Not to frighten ourselves, though it can be frightening. Not to make ourselves feel small, though it certainly does. But to come back, in the end, to a deeper appreciation of the light. To step outside on a clear night, feel the vast dark overhead, and then step back inside, into the warmth and the light and the company of those we love, with a new and grateful awareness of just how rare and beautiful that warmth truly is. The darkness is the frame, the light is the picture. And it is only against the vast dark of the universe that the small bright miracle of our own warm world can be seen for what it truly is, a rare and precious flame, held gently against the endless night, worth every ounce of the wonder and the love we can give it. It is easy, living our bright and busy lives, to forget that the dark is even there. We wake, we work, we move through rooms full of light, surrounded by the warmth and noise of the living world. The great dark overhead becomes, at most, a backdrop we glance at now and then, a scattering of pretty lights in an evening sky. But it is always there, just beyond the thin blue veil, pressing gently against the edge of everything we know. Every moment of your life has unfolded at the very border of that immense dark, held safe within a fragile bubble of air and light. You have never been more than 100 kilometers or so from the edge of the void, no matter where you have stood on this world. The emptiness is not far away in some distant corner of the cosmos. It begins just above your head, and it stretches from there to the very edge of the observable universe. We are, all of us, always, living right at the shoreline of an infinite dark ocean, our backs to the warmth of home, our faces turned, now and then, toward the vast and silent night. And in those rare moments when we truly look, when we let ourselves feel the full weight of the dark overhead, something in us stirs, some ancient recognition of just how small we are and how brief and how precious. That stirring is worth seeking out. It is one of the deepest and truest feelings a human being can have, the awe of standing at the edge of the infinite and knowing, however briefly, exactly where we are. We have journeyed a long way together, out from the warm and familiar surface of our world, through the thin veil of air that protects us, and into the vast dark that lies beyond. We have seen that space is black even in full sunlight, because there is almost nothing out there for light to touch. We have seen that the emptiness between the stars is so complete that a single atom might drift alone in each small volume of space, and that the emptiness between the galaxies is more extreme still. We have seen the enormous voids that make up so much of the cosmos, bubbles of near nothing so vast that light needs hundreds of millions of years to cross them. We have looked into the black holes that swallow light and never let it go, and into the hidden ocean of dark matter and dark energy that shapes the whole universe while remaining forever unseen. We have felt the cold of deep space, just a few degrees above the absolute limit, and heard the silence that fills a place where sound cannot exist. We have traveled to the far future, where the fires of the stars burn out and the darkness deepens toward a final, endless night. And we have discovered, in the middle of all of it, that the darkness is not only an ending, but also a beginning. The vast, empty stage on which the whole story of light and life has played out, and the source of the very atoms that make up our bodies. Through all of it, one truth has returned again and again. The universe is overwhelmingly dark and cold and empty, and our small, warm, living world is a rare and precious exception, a tiny, bright flame held against an enormous, ancient night. The terrifying reality of how dark space really is, in the end, is not only a source of fear, it is a mirror, showing us how extraordinary it is to be here at all, to be warm in a universe that is mostly cold, to be bright in a cosmos that is mostly dark, to be alive and aware in an emptiness that is mostly silent and still. We are the rare exception, and that is exactly what makes us worth cherishing. So the next time you step out beneath a clear night sky and feel that small, instinctive shiver at the vast dark overhead, remember what you are truly seeing. You are looking out into the ancient, cold, and nearly endless night that fills almost all of existence. And you are doing it from a small, bright world of warmth and light and life, one of the rarest things the universe has ever produced, wrapped in a thin shell of air, warmed by a rare nearby fire, home to creatures who can look up into the dark and understand. That is a gift beyond measure. Hold on to it. Cherish the light and the warmth and the company you have, precisely because the dark around us is so complete. Thank you for taking this journey into the darkness with me. If this journey moved you, be sure to like this video and subscribe for more journeys into the cosmos. And as you go, carry this thought with you, out of the dark and back into the light of your own small, bright, and precious world. In all the vast and ancient darkness of the universe, the warmth and light of a single living world, and the quiet wonder of a mind that can behold it, may be the most beautiful thing of all.